penned worlds at Cardboard Force Ghosts, but we did make a deck that you guys can test against while you're going through your gauntlet. So you've got about 2 weeks left of testing, figure out tweaks and play styles against different decks. And this is a deck that I think everybody should test against. So let's look through the deck quickly. Oops. So let's start with our characters. I've seen a lot of people play a really powerful Kylo Dooku deck. That deck's no joke. It's super strong and super powerful. And this is kind of a variation on that. We've also seen a lot of people run Elite Vader with a single Tusken Raider. Another really strong deck because of the aggression this Tusken Raider brings by being able to resolve his die quickly right away. So this kind of combines those two decks. We've got a single Kylo, a single Count Dooku. That gets us up to 21 points, and we throw in a 9-point Tusken Raider. What's great about this deck is you've still got 3 dice just like you do with Vader Raider, and you don't have a 3 damage side naturally on your dice other than the Raider. But you do have 2 damage sides on both Kylo and Dooku, and if you include Kylo's special, maybe a 3rd damage side. And then you've still got your standard Raider. But you come in now with 11, 10, and 8 points of health, so that's 29 hit points for your opponent to burn through. That's pretty high for Awakening standards. There's a couple decks that are pretty similar in health count, but they survive for a long time. To make it even worse, Count Dooku's ability is super useful for extending his life. Your opponent's not going to target him early very often unless they have a heavily modifier-based deck. So this gives you the chance to put some of these powerful upgrades that we're going to look at onto Dooku, while still pushing damage through with Kylo and the Tusken. So let's look at the battlefield next. I chose Rebel War Room. Honestly, once SOR comes out, you probably won't want to use this anymore. You don't end up claiming nearly as much as you'd hope. You end up playing a lot of upgrades in your first couple rounds, so it takes a while before you're able to claim. Every once in a while, you'll see this 3-for-1 side pop up, and you won't have a resource, and you'll just claim early in order to play it for free. Everybody does have a side that costs 1, so it can be useful, but it can also just be used for your opponent to accelerate against you, which is kind of painful. So you could probably swap this out for like the Mos Eisley one or the Imperial Armory or something like that, but not super essential. Alright, so let's look at the rest of the deck here. We'll look at our upgrades first. So we've got 2 copies of Lightsaber. Again, all of these cards have some sort of side that has a resource cost, so you're gonna be broke a lot. So you may as well take advantage of that Rebel War Room. So we've got these to support. This can go on anybody, but the Lightsaber in particular can only go on our blue characters. You could consider adding a Gaffy Stick here and removing something else, maybe a Mobilize or some of our events later. Gaffy Stick's really powerful, but you'll see later that we're running No Mercy, so I tried to limit the number of yellow cards we had so that when I do draw No Mercy, it can be a really powerful blow. So it works out pretty well. But yeah, definitely you could drop 1 Kylo Saber for a Gaffy Stick or something else somewhere else. I've tried running with Flamethrower, haven't been very successful with it, so I prefer these weapons over that. We've also got 2 copies of Sith Holocron, pretty standard for a blue deck, and then 2 copies of Force Throw and 2 copies of Mind Probe, so you're going to need 4 starter sets to have all these cards. I have 2 copies of Immobilize and Force Choke, so these are kind of control-y cards. Even though we're being aggressive, they can really be used to disrupt your opponent. Immobilize can turn things to blanks, which is always good. Force Choke can deal damage to change the side on some things. I've actually made a lot of good use out of this. You can do something like, if you've rolled Kylo in, deal a damage using Force Choke to Kylo to turn his die to a special, to resolve his special and deal 3 or 4 damage if you know they have something expensive in their hand. The good thing right now is a lot of decks out there have a lot of really expensive cards. If you run into red heroes, they've got a lot of 0-cost cards, but Rayhan has those 3-cost blasters that are yellow, and they have 1 with the Force and Second Chance running around in their hands. That's a lot of damage you can deal, especially if they get their battlefield and they start looping things. You're always going to have lightsabers and things like Vader Raider and Force Throws and Mind Probes, so with how high cost the cards are, Kylo's ability actually comes into effect a lot. And several times I've Force Choked my own Kylo off of Dooku in order to turn his side to a special. And you can do the same thing once you get a lightsaber or a Kylo Ren lightsaber onto Kylo. You can Force Choke with Dooku to hit Kylo, turn that to a special, and resolve it immediately. which is a pretty nifty trick that I haven't seen a lot of people take advantage of. So we've got all those. Sith Holocron can cheat all of these into play, and you'll want to because you really want to save money. If you get a Holocron and that Mind Probe early, you throw that on Dooku and you just roll him in first turn every turn. Against Han Rey, it forces them to pretty much gut their hand immediately, and eventually they're going to run out of cards to play and things to trigger Rey's super ambush off of. I've got 2 copies of It Binds All Things. Here's one place where you could maybe drop something for a Gaffy Stick if you wanted. If I get them early, they can be really advantageous, especially if I can get 2 by the second round or something. You're then looking at free Force Chokes as your first action, or 2-cost Mind Probes, which is really great. But at the same time, if you don't use them twice, they're not even paying themselves off. They slow down your actions when you play them. At least they don't slow them down when you want to use them, but possibly some dead weight here that you could replace with something else, like Enrage or something. We've got 2 copies of Backup Muscle, which is a great card. We all know that, right? So Backup Muscle is super useful in this deck at finishing things off. In mirror matches where you're playing against Kylo and Dooku, you can use Backup Muscle to finish off Dooku. You can use it to finish off Han when he keeps repopulating shields. So great card. For now, this should pretty much be in every single aggressive deck, or deck that plans to kill your opponent that runs yellow villains. Finally, move on to our events. I've got 2 copies of No Mercy, pretty standard in the Vader deck. If we zoom out and look at the entire system, we've got 6 cards down here that are not blue. So there's a pretty good chance with No Mercy that you're going to have at least 3 other blue cards in your hand, possibly 4. So yeah, you can roll the 3 damage side on Kylo's Saber and turn it into a 7, or even turn the 2 damage on Dooku into a 7. It's a really powerful card. 2 copies of Force Strike for when we really need to finish something off. If you have a Saber out there, you can kind of spend 2 to deal 3 as your first action and things like that. So pretty standard. You'll want to keep those in. And this is where things get interesting. We actually run a lot of control in this deck. Since we have so much health, we're going to survive for a while, and the best way to do that is by keeping yourself alive by removing their dice. I've got 2 copies of Electroshock and 2 copies of Flank. I'd actually consider removing this for another copy of Feel Your Anger or Deflect, but this is what I've done all my testing on, so we'll leave it like that. I've seen that a lot of times when I play this deck, my opponents really try to target this Tusken Raider right away, and the reason is they're really afraid of Electroshock. You could even replace the 2 copies of Electroshock with He Doesn't Like You. It's still yellow, so it doesn't help No Mercy, but it doesn't require you to spot a yellow character like everything else, like Electroshock does. So then they can attack the Tusken, and you can say, that's great, I'll, pretend I'm carrying and act like I'm defending him, but in reality that just means you're letting me load up Kylo and Dooku. So yeah, Electroshock, really good, but consider changing it out with something else. Not completely sure on that yet. Anyway, 2 Electroshocks, 2 Flanks. I bring 1 Isolation and 1 Deflect. With how ranged happy the Awakenings meta seems to be, I'd almost consider 2 Deflects and getting rid of an Isolation. Isolation's pretty nice for when you want to remove, that 3 damage Vader die, or, that 1 melee Rey die when you have a bunch of melee modifiers. But it's really limited that you can't hit someone's upgrades. I mean, if someone gets a Falcon out there or whatever, they're just going to keep rolling the Falcon and not even roll their characters because they don't really need to. So, it's a powerful card, but could probably be swapped with Deflect. Depends on your meta, depends on what you think is going to happen at Worlds. I have 1 copy of Feel Your Anger. If you're going to keep both immobilizes, you might even switch Isolation with Feel Your Anger. Once you start turning their dice to blanks, it combos really well with Feel Your Anger. And I bring at least 1 copy of Use the Force. That's really helpful for when if you do get a Mind Probe on Dooku and you're rolling it in first turn every turn. When you don't roll a special, it's just heartbreaking because you really want to roll that special, so they have to dump their hand. And Use the Force lets you set it up the next turn, if anything. You can kind of use it as a pseudo-focus. You can also use it to control your opponent's dice and turn things to blank to combo with other stuff. So, that is the Kylo, Dooku, Tusken Raider deck. There's no fancy name. This is just our world's testing, platform. So, hope you guys test out against it. I'll be streaming it for the next couple days. I've got a couple videos. My audio was acting up, so didn't quite record what I was saying, but I'll try to record over it and let you guys see this deck in action, and then hopefully you'll find it useful when you're testing for Worlds. All right, thanks for tuning in. See you guys later.